Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me. Okay, why don't we get started? I do very much appreciate that you each have taken time out of your evening to join us. Let me thank you for that, but not only thank you for that, thank you for being partners with us throughout the year. You are our most faithful supporters, and we really appreciate your partnership throughout the year. You know, I have a number of opportunities to address you in various ways throughout the year, and this is one of them. I always look forward to this, what we call our investor call. We have it once a year, typically it's at this time of year, and it's an opportunity for me to be able to give you a sense as to what we've done, what we've been able to accomplish, and even more importantly, where we are going forward. And the key here is that we're able to go forward and we're able to make a difference in people's lives because of you, because you do support us, you do partner with us, because you volunteer, because you advocate with us, because in various ways you are helping us to make a difference in the lives of those who we're blessed to serve. So before I get into the heart of it, let me just invite you to use our Q&A feature, and so that you can submit your questions, and we will, at 2 points throughout the presentation, we'll invite you to we'll be taking those questions I should take, and then I should say, and then answer those questions at that point in time. So again, use the Q&A feature on your systems, on your computers, basically. So let's start with putting things into perspective, and by that I mean let's talk about the size of homelessness here in San Diego. And some of you may have seen these numbers before, but we have almost 10,000 neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. And that's through a point in time count that is taken at the end of January each and every single year in most major cities. And the most recent, this past January, showed that we have a little over 9,800 individuals who are experiencing homelessness here in San Diego. Now, let me stress that no one would tell you that that's 100% accurate. It's a point in time count. 1,500 individuals canvassed the region one Thursday evening, last Thursday evening and Thursday night, I should say, of the month of January, where people hunkered down at that point, and they go across and they try to capture the number of individuals who are out there in the streets. We also add to that those who are sheltered. So while it's not a 100% accurate count, it does help us because it tells us on a relative basis how we're doing as a region from year to year. And also it's the number that the Housing and Urban Development Division uses out of Washington to be able to assign funds to our continuum of care. And in fact, the most recent dispersal of funds here for the local region has been a little bit in excess of $40 million. So it's key, it's absolutely key to knowing exactly how we're doing as a community. We do know, though, that the number of individuals who touch the homeless services system throughout the year is at least twice the 9,800 individuals. And just to put it in perspective. And so as we move to the next slide, you'll see exactly how we are doing as an organization as it relates to supporting the individuals who we're blessed to serve. And this is a snapshot. So it's a snapshot of of those who we've served through our four pillars. And the 4 pillars are the ones that we incorporated, or we enacted, I should say, and deployed a number of years ago. And they really cover the basic items of needs of the individuals, anywhere from whether we're meeting the basic needs to investing in our children, to health, because without health, really, none of us is good for anything. And so health is an important component of what we do. And then strengthening the individuals to self-sufficiency, basically. So you see some of our numbers. I don't need to go through all of them, but when you think about children who come to us, they're academically, emotionally, and socially delayed. And we know that unless we mitigate those circumstances, they're 4 times more apt to be homeless as adults. So we've helped over 400 individuals across 194 families just in the first 6 months of this year. And it's incredible because the children are resilient. If you apply the right resources with the correct love and compassion, it's incredible how they come back. And then they're working at their peer level, and it makes a big difference in their lives. And so those are as far as the children are concerned. But you see there the number of neighbors who we've served across the board in our various programs. Almost 8,000, a little over 7,500 individuals. We have secured more than 500 permanent housing places for those who we've served. You see that as far as those who have been helped through our employment and education services, you see the number of individuals, almost 1,000 who we serve through our employment education center. And so this just gives you a broad sense of how we're doing as an organization, basically. So as we move into the next slide, I want to focus in on recovery, because recovery is an important element. It has become more and more of an important element of what we do as it relates to individuals who are suffering from substance use challenges, individuals who need not only detox, but need recovery as well. And we'll be spending some time on this because I've invited two of our leaders to be able to join me in a panel discussion on recovery and what that means for those who were blessed to serve. So we opened up a detox center. It was in the latter part of September of last year, and already 165 individuals have successfully completed that program. And by that program, I mean a 14-day intensive inpatient program to be able to detoxify, and then from there be able to go into recovery and continue that recovery through their behavioral health support, as well as then looking into employment opportunities and then leading into housing. And that's an important element. So we'll talk more about that as we work with our panel later on this evening. But before we do that, I just want to stress that every single number that you see here on the screen, all these stats, the important thing to remember is that behind those numbers are individuals and the stories that come with those individuals, and not just those individuals, but the families that are impacted by their situations, whether it be their siblings, but whether it be their children. And so the work that we do is impactful not only for those over 7,000 who we serve, but by extension for those who are family members and are touched by them. And there's no better way really to deliver that message than by you hearing it from an individual who's experienced their situation, and more importantly, has experienced the recovery work that we've afforded the person and where that person is now. So with that, I want to turn it over to a video, very short video. It's 3 minutes long, thereabouts, and it tells a story, or Ashley tells her own story.
My name is Ashley and I'm 32 years old, and I have two boys, an 8-year-old and 10-month-old baby. I've been an addict for 17 years. I was incarcerated. I had gone to prison for 3 years, and Ricky was with my mom. After I got released from custody, I got Ricky back, and we were staying in Texas. I met somebody. We were in this domestic violence relationship actually for like 2.5 years. Our relationship was really bad. Ricky one day went back to the school and he told his art teacher that he had pulled out a knife on me and Ricky and said he wanted to kill us both. CPS came and got involved. They said, if you don't leave this man, we're gonna take Ricky. And I was like, no, I'm like, you know, I don't want to lose my son. So I reached out to my mom and she's like, of course you guys can come to my house. She lived in Riverside. We stayed with her for a little bit, but she lives in a 55 and up community. The landlord was like, you guys can't stay here no more, you know. So we ended up staying in the car. But this guy I met, he was like, go down to Father Joe's. He's like, I actually reached out to somebody is expecting you. Tell them that you're staying in your car, you know, with your baby and you're pregnant, and they will help you. So I did. They talked to me and they said they would take me in the next day. I was like so excited. They're like, we got everything. We got the doctor, we got the daycare, everything else. So I was just so happy. When I was in my room feeling some type of way, upset or sad, I'm just gonna go downstairs and you get to meet the people that are living there. You get to meet the staff there and how they're all so helpful. Like, especially Mary, my case manager from Father Joe's. She's awesome. I got sober I surrendered my life to Christ. I had my baby. I learned to get a good support system. One day I get a phone call from the apartments and they're like, hey, we would love for you to come and, fill out an application. And I was like so happy and so grateful that I was able to finally have a home for me and my kids. One of my dreams is to open a women's home for women that have been in domestic violence relationships, and help them come out of what I came out of. God's been my strength in my lowest moments, even in my darkest moments, He was there. And now my support system is something I never had before. They didn't leave me just hanging. They were there and they reached out, even with the resources that the Father Joe's gives me, like diapers, wipes, whatever I need. Like, oh, I don't have this. Oh, I can call my friends. I love that I have that now. I don't feel alone anymore. I feel like nothing's gonna stop me now. I think it's amazing what you're doing for the families out here, because not a lot of people have the heart and desire to want to help other people, in need. You have such a big heart, and it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Ashley is an incredible woman. She's an incredible mother. I'm really very, very proud of her. Despite her many challenges and the adversity, she's risen. She's risen to the challenge. I mean, I know she points to us and the tremendous help that we've extended to her, but at the end of the day, we've just tapped into her potential. I mean, we reinstilled that hope. She's done the work. She's done the hard work, and so I'm very proud of her. It had been weighing on my heart for a couple of years that we were seeing people cycle in and out of our shelter beds. We weren't getting to their fundamental issue. Fundamental issue was that they have substance use challenges. Not all of them, but a good number of them. And so that's why we decided to really give up some city dollars, some government funding, in order to convert, I should say, one of our facilities into 44 detox beds, and then also 248 recovery and sober living beds. And I'm glad we made that decision, because it's made all the difference in the world, in the lives of people like Ashley, as an example. And Ashley is an example of thousands who we help throughout each and every single year. So with that, I'm pleased to invite with me this evening to participate in a panel discussion on recovery and sober living and detoxification. I've invited Dr. Megan Parch, our Chief Health Center Officer, as well as Jesse Caseman, who is our Chief Client Services Officer. So Dr. Parch leads our Village Health Center and everything associated with health, like detox. And then Jesse Caseman oversees our non-medical client programs. And they're both with me here this evening. And I'm going to lead the panel discussion by asking the questions, and they're going to answer those hard questions that I feel to them. But they're the experts at this. So with that, I'm going to start with Jesse. Jesse, the first question I'll put to you, and that has to do with RISE, and you'll explain what RISE is all about, that acronym. But what need were we seeing in the community that led us to create RISE as a sober living environment, and why was it important to invest in this work?
Well, good afternoon or good evening now, I guess it is. Thank you, Deacon Jim, for the question. And I really am excited to get to share about our programs with everyone here tonight. I think it's important to know a little bit about what our services were before we created RISE. Father Joe's Villages operates over 700 beds of shelter every single night. And for a long time, most of those beds were funded by sources that required the same kind of model. It was a low barrier and low demand model that was required. And just to set the table a little bit for everyone in this space, low barrier means removing reasons a person may not be able to enter a shelter program. So not requiring ID, not requiring payment, not requiring medication, medication adherence to get inside of the program. Low demand means that we could not have any requirements for a participant to have to participate in services. So we could not mandate any kind of sobriety requirements, no requirements to meet with a case manager, no requirements to progress on a case plan. Our staff were still expected to provide those services, but a client was not required to participate. So we saw that low barrier and low demand model work for a lot of people in our community, and we still believe that that's the right fit for a lot of folks. But we also heard repeatedly through our street outreach team and at the day center and via client surveys that it just wasn't a supportive system for everyone. Instead, what we had were clients that were really asking for diversity in shelter design and specifically for a sober shelter environment where they could live around others who were also committed to being abstinent from substances. We know from experience at Father Joe's Villages that people will turn down shelter for a lot of different reasons, but we were hearing over and over again that people were turning down shelter and even exiting existing shelters because they simply could not live in a program around individuals who are actively using substances. So in July 2024, we did what I think we do really well, which was listen to our clients. We surveyed 350 clients that were living in the Palmirable Center, which at that time was a low barrier, low demand shelter. And over 70% of those participants told us that they wanted a program with more structure and they wanted sobriety requirements. So we took that feedback. We designed RISE, which stands for Reaching Independence and Self-Empowerment. Like Deacon said, that's a 248 bed sober shelter for single adults that we opened in January of 2025. So in our RISE program, we continue to be low barrier. We don't want to put up any kind of, reason that a person will turn down our shelter. So we still, don't require ID to come into the program. We don't require medication adherence. We are open to pets in all of our shelter spaces. But what we have changed is those demands. RISE does have demands of our clients because we know they can do it. So RISE is structured. It includes requirements that participants are working with their case manager, that they're progressing on a case plan. It's a time-limited stay with us where we're really expecting that they're saving up money. And the entire time, we need them to remain abstinent from substances. So we knew that those changes were important. RISE gives single adults experiencing homelessness a real choice about where they live and who they live around. And, our creed stands for compassion, respect, empathy, empowerment, and dignity. And I think a choice like that really empowers a client to create community with individuals who are also choosing sobriety and can help them to stay focused on their goals, not only to their sobriety, but also to obtaining income and exiting to permanent housing as quickly as possible. So it's been a fun journey to get to put this program together for our clients, but also with our clients. We continue to learn every single day and make tweaks as this program gets off the ground.
That's great. Thank you. It's meeting people where they are, right? I mean, it's recognizing that people are at different points, I like to say, in their journey out of homelessness. And so to be most effective in their lives, we have to really listen to them, as you say, and then put together the program all programs that will best help them in their situation, right? So that's really great. Dr. Parch, what about detox? Tell us how that initiative started.
Well, as Jesse's referenced, it's a pleasure to be with everybody here this evening. Thank you so much for hosting and grilling us with the tough questions, Deacon. So how did detox come to be? Well, as Jesse referenced, so many of our services and programs are really shaped by what our community members are telling us and also what our community is showing us. And so there were a lot of things that kind of brought us to this catalyst point where we said something has to change. And Father Joe's Villages is always maybe the first and sometimes the only provider to step into these gray areas, these spaces where people are continuously falling through the cracks, where their outcomes are poor. And so some examples within our track record are our street health program, our recuperative care program on our campus, our medication assisted treatment program. We're always looking at where people are not reaching, the stabilization that allows them to end their experience of homelessness and thrive. And so what we were seeing sadly in our community is we were seeing the influence of fentanyl in our drug supply. We were seeing an increase of clusters of overdose incidents on and around our campus. We were seeing an increase in deaths related to substance use. We commonly hear questions related to chicken or egg. Is substance use a cause of homelessness? Is homeless, does one kind of come prior to the other? And we commonly state whether it is the reason for or on the other side of things, it is so important to address somebody's substance use. It is destabilizing in every way. And many of the community members that we come into contact with want to do something different, as Jesse's referencing, and they don't have a clear pathway to do that. And nothing's been more sad for our team over time than to hear somebody say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm ready. I need help. And they're reaching their hands out to us, and we don't have an intervention available for them. And what really kind of brought that to, to the forefront was when we investigated further, we found that there were only 2 Medi-Cal funded beds, that's state health insurance funded beds, that were accessible to our community members. And so when they were ready, when they told someone on our street health team that they were ready, when they told someone from outpatient substance use disorder services, when they confided with their physician, or they said, I'm ready, we didn't have a space that we could align them with. We could send them to that next level of residential care. We were setting up this wonderful sober shelter program, but they didn't have that in between. They didn't have that point that could help them on that progression. Some of the steps in the journey were missing. And so we came to you, Deacon Jim, at the time that, as you said, we were evaluating partnerships and funding and being good stewards of funds, and really meeting our community's needs, because we saw people were dying, and we saw that people wanted help. And we knew that we were most equipped and most expert to do it. And so thankfully, we were able to bring this amazing program to fruition, because of our leadership team's buy-in, because of our team members saying this is what's needed, and our community saying this is what's needed, and certainly because probably many of the folks, our donors on the line, who believed deeply in how necessary this was to help people to transition out of their experience of homelessness. And I can say we have so many folks who come in who share with us they're using substances to stay safe, to stay awake, to protect themselves and their children and their pets and their belongings. For many of the folks that we're serving, substance use is not a choice, it is a way to survive. And so giving them the alternative of coming into detox and then transitioning to Jesse's team sober shelter, that means that one day they might be unhoused, and from that point forward, they never have to be unhoused again. And that's been a really remarkable thing to witness. And we're just so grateful to have had that opportunity. So thanks for welcoming the question, Deacon.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And, when we think of detox and we think of RISE and the transformative recovery service, the TRS services, taking them all together and operating together as village recovery services, what can a recovery journey look like? And how do these services work together to support someone along the way? And this is a question for both you, Dr. Parcha, and Jesse as well. So whoever wants to take it first, and then the other can add.
Megan, you can go ahead. You can kick it
All
off.
right. You know me, I'm always excited to humble brag about our team and services and so forth. I think what's really neat about having this continuum on our campus is that there is no wrong point of entry, that folks get to tell their story once to a consistent team of providers and support staff. And some of those things are really, exciting to me. We're able to outreach to them through street health. We're engaging folks, we're getting to know them, they're telling that provider and that care team what they need. Those individuals are able to kind of walk with them, whether they're living in the streets, parks, or canyons or their vehicle, whether they're seeing us in brick and mortar and our outpatient services. They tell their story once, they have that care continuity, they have that trust and relationship, and they're really, we walk alongside them. We're able to street health, to outpatient services, to medication-assisted treatment, to detox, to RISE. We're able to kind of follow the flow. And certainly we know that like cancer, like diabetes, like many health conditions, this is a chronic relapsing illness. The likelihood of somebody moving on from detox and having that be their only treatment experience over time is unlikely, says the research. And so the fact that that care team is consistent, we're able to sense through our team members at RISE, through the folks in transformative recovery who provide outpatient services, through their providers who are doing medication-assisted treatment, we're that safety net. We're able to see when somebody is departing from baseline. We're able to see when somebody's getting back to old thinking or behaviors, and we're able to change the way that we're providing services to increase group sessions, to increase individual counseling, to really, as you'd referenced, Deacon, meet people where they are and create the most supportive environment for them. Sometimes that means going to Rise, and sometimes that means coming back to detox again if that's needed. But we're able to really wrap our arms around each unique person, and able to create a journey that follows them throughout, and really allows them to be the most expert on their life and their goals and their experience. And so I think that kind of no wrong point of entry, and having this continuum on our campus where we're able to work seamlessly as a team, really benefits the folks that we're serving here. And Jesse, I don't know what you would add to that as well. I know you see it in the shelter.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So much of what I think the beautiful creation of Rise and this recovery transformation services that we have is really the relationship between the shelter and the Village Health Center. Megan's so right. There's really no wrong way to come into our spaces. There's so many different ways that someone can come into Rise specifically. Many of our participants initially interact with us through one of our outreach teams or at our day center. We just recently had a man in his 40s who had been battling really chronic alcoholism throughout his life. He had housing instability. The street outreach team had connected with him multiple times out on the street. And through that relationship, he expressed really a desire to just do something different this time. They were able to get him into Rise within hours. It's those kinds of moments where, all of the hard work of program design and making sure that we have all of these resources available, you just really see the proof in the pudding where it can just change someone's life in that moment when they're ready, like Megan said, to just have something available to offer them in that moment. He's still with us. It's been, a few weeks. He's still with us in the program. He's doing well. He's stabilizing. But, we do recognize that it's a journey. Rise participants do not have to have a history of substances, but most of them do. Some of our folks are just here because they prefer to live around a community where other people are not under the influence. And that's a great place for them. We welcome them into Rise. But for folks who are struggling with substances, it's such a fantastic support to know that we have our transformative recovery services just downstairs. We have our detox program just downstairs, because it may be that Rise isn't the right program right now, but we do know that we have other resources. We have a team of people who are experts in substance use disorder and can really support that individual in making choices that support where they are and what they need in their life. All Rise participants are required to be abstinent from all substances while enrolled in the program. And so once they're in Rise, we are testing the participants randomly to ensure adherence to those abstinence requirements. However, there's a 24/7 team there that, often doesn't take a test to be able to see the difference in someone's behavior or to just have concerns about maybe the way they're interacting with other people in the program, or, maybe sleeping a lot, different behaviors that we're seeing that are concerning. And, I'm really proud of the team that we have for being able to pick up on those differences in the individuals. They've got 248 clients up there in the program at any given time, but they really know the humans that they're working with and can, make recommendations. And, unfortunately, like I said, it may not be the program for them right now. It may be that they need to go to detox. Maybe they need a more intense inpatient program. We are committed to the integrity of the program. And, as Rise, operating the Rise program, we really feel we have a duty to protect our commitment to a sober environment for all of the Rise participants. So it, unfortunately, sometimes does result in someone being required to exit from the program because it's just not the right time for them to be there. But we know that there are referrals that we can make. And I will say that even if someone exits Rise and goes to detox, or they exit and go to an inpatient treatment program, we really consider that a success. Like Megan said, we know recovery is a process, and sometimes there's loops and swirls and circles that come as part of that recovery. We're here to provide non-judgmental services to our program participants, and we will welcome them back as soon as they are ready to return. So it's not a goodbye forever. Sometimes it's just a goodbye for now, and we'll be here when you're ready to come back.
Jesse, I'm going to piggyback off of that quickly, and apologies, Deacon. For those folks who don't know our campus well, to your point, the co-location of a health center, a detox program, and a sober shelter within the same building is really where the magic is, right? Having these things co-located in the same space is truly what makes this system work as well as it does. And I also wanted to share, to your point, yes, we see repetition sometimes. It's not that it's a revolving door, but we do see that some folks are coming back, and what that tells me is that they feel cared for. They don't feel judged, right? They feel a sense of trust and relationship with us. And in detox, we've seen between 60 to 70 individuals who said this wasn't the right space or time for me, who have come back. And to me, that's the biggest compliment, right? Is that people said, I got a piece of what I needed and I need more of that. And I trust you to be the space to help me to find it. And so how blessed we are, right? To have folks who are seeking support actively, who are engaging, who are looking to better themselves. And it's just a real honor to be able to have those supportive services on our program to meet the need as it's presenting.
Absolutely. And I think one of our blessings is that continuum of care, right? So that we're able, if one of your clinicians is seeing someone, and I'm not talking about as it relates to detox, but just in general, seeing someone from a health standpoint, and yet they see that this individual needs some support on the residential side, your clinician is able to call one of his or her colleagues on the residential side and say, by the way, this person should not go back on the streets. All right, it's going to be detrimental, and then work that out. And similarly, you may have someone residential who sees that an individual struggling health-wise in some way, and they can pick up the phone and call one of the health clinicians and do that and make a referral. And it's a same-day referral, which is great because a lot of clinics you can't go in the same day, right? But it's a same-day referral. So that's one of the blessings that we have with that continuum of care. So I have to tell you both, and I've said this to you before, but one of the things I love seeing about the RISE program is that unlike when it was city funded, now when you go into the RISE program, you see people who are feeling good about themselves. Why? Because they're making their way out of homelessness. Before, it would frustrate me actually, but since we were hampered by city dollars and city requirements not to make any demands on individuals, then a lot of times they would sit there, right? And nothing would come of it, and they just linger and linger. But now I notice that the people in RISE, they're working towards a better place. Housing, so they work with the case managers. They work in so many regards. And so I have a question for you, Jesse. As it relates to that, think about our employment and education services program. How does that come into play?
Yeah, before I get there, I just want to note, because you're so right, Deacon Jim, you can really feel the difference. There wasn't a lot of physical change that happened on the third floor, and changing it from a low demand shelter to the RISE program. So physically it looks the same, but it feels so different to have clients that have an agenda for the day, that have a purpose for the day, beyond, the requirements that they're participating in a case plan and progressing on a case plan. We require that they're really part of the community. So not only do they have to keep their own bed area clean and neat, but they're also responsible for contributing to keeping the communal spaces on the floor nice and clean. And so I think all of those moments, those life skills, if you will, of really getting back into a routine of contributing to community, being part of a neighborhood. In our residential team, we are regularly talking about how these aren't just rules of the program. We really have a rule program or a rule system that is based on what we know future landlords are going to expect of our clients when they're tenants on a lease. And so, we're not here to be parental to these adult clients that we're serving. It's really to remind them what it takes to participate and to be an upstanding community member. And you can just feel it in the RISE program. Every time I walk down those halls, the guys are, good morning, da, 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 and somebody's mopping, someone's wiping down, something, and getting dressed for the day and heading out for a job interview or whatever that might be. But getting to your question about employment and education services. So at Father Joe's Villages, we operate a Jean Burkhart Employment and Education Services program. It is located on the first floor of our St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa, and it's open to anyone who's homeless or at risk of losing their housing. Our center is open Monday through Friday. It's staffed really by experts in employment and education. So not only do they offer adult education through training modules on topics like computer basics and resume development, we also have our skills training program. that is called STEPS, and clients are matched with an employee mentor who will train them in fields that are regularly hiring in San Diego. So programs like our culinary arts program, our custodial training program, we can help a client get a guard card so that they can go out and get a job in security. They can work with our retail team at one of our retail locations across San Diego and be trained in customer service and in delivering retail services. That customer service is transferable to so many different kinds of jobs that they could do out in the community. So it's, really, we're fortunate, I think, to have not only our employment and education services staff, but also all of these experts that go across, the various disciplines that we have here at Father Joe's Villages, and staff members who, most people who work as a maintenance tech, for example, don't also have included in their job description that they're going to mentor clients who are learning to be trained as a maintenance technician. And I think it's so special because the development of soft skills like communicating with your peers, or working with a team of people in a skills training class, or really, listening to and understanding direction from your supervisor. Those are things that aren't always taught in a job training program, and it's just really important, especially for the population that we're working with, that we are delivering that kind of service and support with an understanding of the real trauma and stigma that's attached to homelessness. The reality is that most of our clients have been through an array of events that resulted in their homelessness. We know how important it is that we create opportunities, and especially environments where they can practice new skills without any judgment and really start to trust their own ability to end their housing crisis. When someone's homeless, their day-to-day job is to survive. And so our role here is to help them see beyond just that survival and help them really envision a better future for themselves. And we're here to be patient and present cheerleaders along the way. So I really think a program like RISE pairs perfectly with our employment and education services programming. And we see that in the numbers. Our RISE clients represent only 42% of our adult shelter beds at Father Joe's Villages, but our RISE clients make up 77% of our employment and education services participants. So you might say, well, yeah, Jesse, that's because there's a case plan that they're required to participate in and they have to progress in a case plan. But we can write a case plan all day long. That doesn't mean that someone has to embrace the case plan and work the case plan. But we are seeing our RISE clients really rise to the occasion and meet the expectations of their case plan by participating in programs at a much higher rate than what we would have expected. Another example, our RISE clients make up 52% of our shelter participants that participate in chaplaincy. So 42% of our beds, 52% of our participants in chaplaincy. So I think that really speaks to a desire to work on their whole self, not just on where am I going to stay next, where am I going to lay my head, but really how am I going to sustain myself financially and also holistically, whether that's spiritually or just through beliefs and self-care.
That's great. You just mentioned chaplaincy, which, of course, is near and dear to my heart because of being a deacon, obviously. But that said, it's not forced on anyone. And yet it's incredible with what you just said. It's incredible. More and more people are availing themselves of the services of the chaplaincy. There's a lot that we have a full-time chaplain as a result. I think it's important, right? And there's a lot of brokenness in the population we serve, right? And so the reality is that that's a part of healing. And so the fact that we have that there I think has been a godsend for them as well. And I've heard that from individuals. So thank you for that. And the services, Dr. Part, you spoke about the transformative recovery services, a lot of it being inpatient, but not all of it is inpatient. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on the outpatient work that your team does.
Of course, thank you. And reflecting on what you were saying, related to chaplaincy briefly before I humble brag about our transformative recovery services program and team, I think the connectedness with community and hope for the future are so important, and joy. And so I think that our chaplaincy program really helps to promote that community, that hope, that joy, that connectedness that folks are sometimes missing for many, many years on end. And so I'm so grateful that that's another place that they can kind of plug into on our campus, in this amazing array of services as they're ready and based upon their unique goals and strengths and needs, they're finding everything that they truly need on our campus to stabilize, like you said, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and so forth. it's really neat to see kind of the light bulbs kind of flicker on and people start to come alive again. And you were reflecting on the community within our building too. And I was really struck by what you were sharing, that it feels different. And I think there's something that feels so special to be in a building where everyone is committed to change. Every single person in this building, in detox and in the Rise Sober Shelter, is truly committed to change, and it feels really good. The energy here is very special, and so it is fitting to talk about transformative recovery services because they are truly a vehicle for change. So they are a team that is state certified to provide outpatient substance use disorder services. They do that in conjunction with our street health team. So they deploy into the community to outreach to individuals, to educate them, to provide supportive services, to provide referrals to treatment. They also provide services in our brick and mortar. And so they can do assessment, treatment planning, individual counseling, and group counseling. In fact, their group counseling is so popular that we've had to expand to increase the number of groups because people were complaining that there wasn't enough room in the groups for them to participate. So we've had to add more groups to our calendar. To give you just an understanding of the overwhelming response from our community, we have seen an increasing uptick of folks month over month who are walking in same day asking for supportive services related to substance use. And so within the last month, we saw 180 individuals who walked in and requested support related to their substance use disorder. So truly a remarkable thing. The health center is open, business hours and business days of the month. So to have 180 unique community members in the last month's time walk in and request supportive services is really telling that our community members know we are a space where they can get assistance. They know that they can get it rapidly. And again, we want to strike while the iron is hot. When there is motivation and interest in change, the last thing that we want to do is create these artificial barriers to say, come back in a few days, come back in a few hours. We can address that need in a few weeks. Let's put you on this wait list. So one of the things that our transformative recovery services does is they deploy in a way like it's like Mighty Mouse. I see messages all day long. Is there someone here to talk with folks about detox? Somebody's here wants to learn about, outpatient services. Somebody wants to hear about residential, and our transformative recovery services team, they deploy to meet people. They do warm handoffs. They're engaging folks at their time of need and sharing with them about the supportive services that we have on our campus or through our partner providers. So it's outpatient services, yes, but it's so much more than that. They are wayfinders, right? They are like belonging builders, and they are folks who are finding a way to plug folks back into the community again. And so it's neat to have them embedded within our system. One other thing that I'll share about them briefly is that many of our substance use disorder counselors have lived experience. There is something to be said about someone who has been in your shoes, who understands. And there is, again, going back to that important word, hope, right? There is an installation of hope when our counselors say, I was where you are, and here's where I am now, and let me help you find a path that works for you to be successful and to stabilize and to leave this experience behind. And so we're just really grateful to have such a flexible and dynamic and engaging team in our transformative recovery services. So thank you for letting us chat about them for a bit. They are ones to watch, that is for sure.
That's great. This has been great. We can go on and on because heaven knows I can continue to ask questions. But instead of doing that, I'd like you each to wrap up just very quickly. If you would share, we heard Ashley's story, right? But I would love to hear, and I think those on the line would love to also hear a story from each of you that's very near and dear to your heart. And there are probably many of them, but if you would just choose one very quickly, just if you could spend a minute or so, each of you on sharing that with us, because it drives home the fact that it's not just numbers. Right, that's what I know is what gives me hope, and I think it's what drives each of you and what gives you hope, and which is why you love what you do and you're good at it. So anyway, I don't know who wants to go first. Jesse, why don't you go first?
I'll go first. I'm unmuted. Deacon, you're so right. Every day we're seeing awe-inspiring change in the lives of the people that we serve. And sometimes those changes are really big, but sometimes they're small and maybe unnoticed by the untrained eye. But those changes don't happen by accident. And for me, it can really take my breath away to just really see someone rebuild faith and hope in themselves and a confidence that there is something different, that they are worthy of a life that they envision for themselves. And so most recently, and let me look at my notes because I don't want to get it wrong, we had a gentleman who was living with us. He was in his 40s. He had experienced homelessness for the first time. He had a long history of incarceration, misuse of substances, and through that, his family relationships had really crumbled, and he was unstable to the point that he didn't have anywhere to go for the first time in his life. He was scared, as you might imagine. He came to Father Joe's Villages. He lived in our RISE program. He trained in his field and he was an apprentice and then ended up getting a paid job in that field. He, had a lot of battles throughout the program. It wasn't all a cakewalk. He, struggled with some lingering legal matters. He was frustrated by trying to balance his work schedule with expectations in the program. He, really was trying to balance all of those different things that we all have to in our lives. But the staff encouraged him and his efforts paid off. And after just 110 days in RISE, so not even 4 months in our program, he exited to his own apartment without any kind of subsidy. He reports that he's still doing very well. He's still in his home. He's still, working the same job. And he's just finding joy in the mundane and the schedule and in the normalcy of the day-to-day routine that we all know is just, it can be boring for us, but he's finding a lot of joy in the boredom. We'll put it that way.
Thank you. Dr. Parch.
So I'm going to spin this another way, and I'm going to say that for me, when I reflect on the success stories of this growing continuum, it has been the most gratifying personal and professional accomplishment to have created a detox program on our campus. Having had a family member with lived experience of substance use, having seen their struggles, having seen who they've been able to become as they were able to leave those struggles behind because they were able to engage in treatment. That has been such a gift. And to know that we're able to provide that gift, not only to our community members, but to the family members who love them and the community that supports them, there's a ripple effect of that. And I'm struck by when we began to discuss this idea, it seemed like a Herculean effort, and it seemed really far-fetched. And we wanted it, and we knew that we needed it, but there were going to be some challenges to making it happen. And the very first individuals that we spoke with about this, in terms of kind of like, hey, we're thinking of doing this, the next day emailed and said, we want to donate to that program. We want to make that happen. So I think it's the folks who are on the line here that help us to build programs that address people's needs and help them to leave homelessness behind. And it's truly such a blessing to be partnered with so many individuals who believe in us and the services that we provide, but also believe in our community members' capacity for change. And Jesse and I can say that we are seeing and feeling it daily. Over 50% of individuals who have participated in detox so far have graduated. And by that, I mean, they've gone through their full treatment protocol. They've moved on to a new safe and stable setting, whether that's in our RISE program or with one of our partner treatment providers for longer term programming to focus on stabilizing further from their substance use disorder. So I think the number of folks reached and the outcomes that we're seeing so far really speak to the fact that, if you build it, they will come. We said we need to build something. There's a myth out there that people don't want help. We built something and they want help and they're showing up and they're getting what they need. And that is just the biggest success and something I'm really grateful for. So thank you to everyone who's on the line for supporting us and believing in us and believing in our community to make this possible.
Thank you, each of you, because you guys are so passionate about what you do. That's what makes you so effective. And I enjoy having you on the team, right? You're my blessings. And so thank you for that. And that's a good segue. First of all, I'm humbled by those who partner with us day in and day out and help us to make a difference. It's a good segue to one of the first question we have here. Someone wants to know, well, how is this all funded? And that is a good question, because we stepped away from government funding, from city funding, because we thought it wasn't being effective in the lives of those we serve, and it wasn't an efficient use of those dollars, those precious dollars that we have, whether the dollars are public or private. And so that means, though, that it's all philanthropic, right? And by that I mean on the detox side, it's a medical program. So we utilize CalAIM, which is California's version of Medicaid, in order to fund the medical services there. That's in detox. Of course, you probably have heard that Medicaid in general has been under fire of late, and so we're hoping that the integrity of that program will be maintained, so we can continue to do the work that we do through our health center, not only at the detox. And then as far as RISE is concerned, the sober living and recovery, that's all philanthropic. So no more government funding there. And so it's through the generosity of people like you who are on the line, who believe in the work that we do and the impact that we have. So I thank you for that. And that was a good question. Also, something that's come up of late in the last couple of weeks has been the visit of the Secretary of Health and Human Services, as well as the Secretary of HUD, who were here in San Diego, and basically to deliver a new program, or announce a new program out of Washington called Treatment First. And so there's a question here that I've been asked, well, what do I think about Treatment First versus Housing First? Housing First has been the stand that the HUD has had now for probably almost 24 years. And in its purest fashion, it means that you provide housing to an individual and then you get to treatment. Okay. But you don't hold back housing in lieu of treatment. You provide the housing and then you encourage them to treatment. In the purest sense, what Treatment First is that you don't provide any housing, that you make sure you put an individual through treatment. And it could very well be that there's a period of a year, let's say, in sobriety before that housing is even offered. Well, we believe, and I believe, that they are not mutually exclusive. I believe that we need treatment and we need housing. We have to keep in mind that there isn't enough housing here, and we're going to talk about that a bit in a few minutes. There is enough of housing, and we have an affordable housing crisis here in San Diego itself. And we also have to recognize that housing is very expensive. So that the thought that you provide treatment and then the person pretty much goes on their own, because now they're sober and they go on their own and they find their housing in San Diego, that would be problematic, because average one bedroom apartment goes for about $2,400 a month. And that's very expensive, especially for the population we serve. So that even if you provide treatment, you still have to have a focus on housing. In the absence of that, people are going to wind up remaining on the streets, and that's not healthy for them and for their recovery, right? So again, I hope I've answered that question. I mean, again, they're not mutually exclusive. We have found over the years, we Father Joe's Villages, success because there is treatment and there is housing, and that's an important element. So with that, I think that covers the questions so far, but there's going to be an opportunity again to ask some additional questions. But why don't we move on to the next? Actually, the next I want to talk about one of the entry points to all the work that we do. A lot of you on the line have heard in the last 2 months about the difficulties with the day center, the current day center that we have operated on behalf of the city. Now, in the 11.5 years I've been here, in fact, it was the first contract I signed when I first arrived here 11.5 years ago. And that was to operate the Neogood Day Center that's on 17th Street, a few blocks from our campus. And up until this year, we have been funded, and the city had provided 50% of the funding, which represented $850,000. Well, this year they decided they would no longer provide that funding, nor provide the facility. And so obviously, we were extremely concerned about that, because just as we put it in perspective, you see some of the numbers here. We served almost 7,000 individuals just last year through the day center. The day center provided almost 100,000 services in aggregate, anywhere from the almost 25,000 showers to the laundry that was provided, to the mail services, that's the address of record for many individuals, to being able to have a place where you plug in a phone, to be able to come in and start connecting to services, start working with a case manager. The reality is that for every 10 individuals who present themselves on a daily basis needing shelter, only about 2 of them get shelter. And that's not just within our facilities, but across the board, because we have access to a sense of the shelter system as a whole. And so think about that, 2 out of 10. It just drives home the fact that not enough individuals are, not enough shelter beds, I should say, are available to individuals. And of course, we know that housing is even an extended wish, because there isn't enough housing. So the day center has served a very real need. In addition to the services that I just mentioned and you see on the screen, it's also been a place where people who are housed but precariously housed have come in order to ask us to help them with maybe utilities, so that their power isn't shut off. So maybe to catch up with a month's worth of rent, or help them to pay a security deposit. And so this is an opportunity for us to help people retain their housing. It's through our prevention programs. It's extremely important that we help people to remain housed. It becomes a lot more expensive to the community when a person falls onto the streets, and it's a lot more costly, not only costly, but also traumatic for the individuals involved. And so keeping them housed is very important. So all those activities happen through our day center. And again, so of course, we were extremely dismayed when we heard that the funding would cease. But no sooner, we got through our disappointment very quickly, I should say, because again, seeing the need and then rising up to the challenge. So I'm happy to say that we will be transitioning those services onto our campus at 15th Street and Imperial Avenue. And the transition is well on the way and will be completed by the end of September. Actually, so October 1st, we'll be at the new detox. What we've done is we've remodeled a portion of our dining room at our current location without diminishing any existing services. And this is in large part through the generosity of the community. We went out, there were 2 individuals actually who stepped up and wanted to contribute $150,000 in aggregate combined, and they put it up as a match challenge. And the community, you guys, stepped up and met that match challenge. And so as a result, we have the $100,000 to be able to do the remodel, and then also the additional funds which will be used in order to make up the displacement of the funds from the city. So again, a bad situation, and we've made, I always say that, God can take bad situations and make good out of them. And we see that time and time again at Father Joe's Villages, and this is yet another example. And so I thank you, the community members. I also thank our team, because our team stepped up and said, we can't have this. We can't have the loss of a day center. We need to make this work somehow. And so I'm very appreciative of that. So with that, let me turn now to what truly breaks the cycle of homelessness, and that's a home. The reality is that, yes, we have more shelter beds than any other service provider, and in aggregate, all the service providers do a great job of providing a lot of shelter. But the reality is, you saw in my initial slide, that out of the almost 10,000 individuals who are homeless in San Diego, half of them are unsheltered, right? And so again, pointing to the fact we don't have enough shelter beds, we also don't have enough housing, and so the system is clogged, right? So deploying housing is what, as I mentioned, breaks the cycle of homelessness. Back in 2017, we made the announcement, Father Joe's Villages, that we were launching what we termed the Turning the Key initiative, whereby we would deploy 2,000 affordable housing homes throughout into San Diego. As I mentioned, it's very expensive to pay for market rate housing here. And so providing affordable housing is a must here. And we do it through different ways. I mean, you see on the screen that right now we have about 900 units that are deployed of affordable housing. And one of the ways of doing that is through single room occupancies, SROs. There were in this community many SROs up until the last 10 years. And they started going by the wayside because the properties were converted to market rate housing. That was very detrimental to those who were just hanging on by their fingernails. A lot of them were falling onto the streets. So there's various ways of tackling this affordable housing issue. One of them is through the redeployment of SROs. And so we're committed to doing that. A number of years ago, we opened up a number of SROs within one of our buildings, and I'm happy to report that within the next couple of months, we'll be deploying another 33 units within one of our buildings, right, to add to the complement of SROs. And SROs are exactly that. They're just a room. They have a small refrigerator and a microwave. All the facilities are down the hall. All right, so that's where you take a shower, the restrooms and so forth. But what it provides you is low-cost housing. $850 approximately is what those units go for right now, which is well within reach of our population. In fact, I can tell you that of all our units that are deployed, our SROs have the least vacancy. They're usually 100% occupied all the time, as you can imagine. And so that's one way of tackling the affordable housing. There are other ways. We have St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa, which we opened up a couple 4 years ago. We cut that ribbon, 400 units, basically. It's 400 homes, 407 to be exact, and over 500 people have either been helped off the streets or have been kept from falling onto the streets through St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa. Some of you, in fact, on the line were involved in helping us to deploy that, and so I thank you. Then we also have Benson Place. Again, another way of tackling this is through the acquisition and refurbishment of motels, and that's what we did down in the South Bay area off of Hollister, and we have 83 spanking new units there, and they're beautiful. It's a gated community, and it's wonderful to have taken an Easy 8, which was dilapidated, and turned it into something that's really constructive there. And it's called Benson Place, and I think Judy Benson may be on the line, and I thank her. She and her husband Roger have been good to us throughout the many years, and so I thank Judy and all of you who were involved and have been involved in the Turning the Key to date. I have with me here on the line, I have with me Jody Rothery, who heads up the development of our affordable housing. She heads up that division, and so I'd like her to tell you about the exciting things we have going forward under the Turning the Key and what we have in the pipeline. So Jody, it's all yours.
Yes, thank you, Deacon Jim, and thank you all for being here tonight. I'm just so blessed to have the opportunity to share with you the exciting updates of the Turning the Key program. We've heard about the many challenges people face when they've lost their housing, but even those that are still housed are struggling to find affordable, safe homes. In fact, the San Diego Housing Federation recently released a statistic saying that San Diego has a shortage of roughly 135,000 affordable homes just to meet our demand through 2029. To put that into perspective, nationally, the affordable housing industry builds about 125,000 homes a year across all 50 states. So it's a huge task we have in front of us. And although we can't fix this problem overnight, what I can tell you is we are making serious, steady strides toward increasing the amount of affordable housing here in San Diego. And most of the time for an update like this, we're sharing a list of things that we hope will happen. But this year is exciting because we're executing. We have 3 projects totaling 387 homes that are fully financed and will start construction within the next 8 months. And as fabulous as that is, I will share that it has been a difficult journey to get here. 2 years ago, the funding environment for this work shifted hard. Federal subsidies that our projects were designed around disappeared. The funding that we thought was fully secured was clawed back. And as I'm sure you've all felt, the inflationary environment has just skyrocketing cost. And that has also hit us in the development world, hitting almost every aspect of our deals. In fact, a lot of very capable developers in this region responded by stepping back, sidelining projects, putting deals on hold, freezing pipelines. And some of our peers haven't actually started building since. Well, we went the other way. We decided to not let money be the problem. because that's really what stopped us for a while. We decided to tackle it by trying to find ways to bring down the costs. And with construction costs being the largest line item in our development budgets, that's where we decided to focus our energy. So we bet the pipeline on two ways of building that almost no one in affordable housing is using currently. And that has been what's really allowed us to propel our pipeline forward. The first of those has been mass timber. Instead of pouring concrete and framing on site, mass timber uses engineered wood panels that are manufactured to a millimeter tolerance in a factory. They're delivered numbered and almost assembled like a kit. What used to take us weeks to go in now goes in days. The whole assembly is lighter, costs less, and on the environmental side, it stores carbon instead of emitting it. The second technology that we turned to was modular. And this isn't just modular components, but entire apartments. Walls, plumbing, wiring, cabinets, finishes, all get built in a factory here in Southern California and placed on site. We're able to start foundations, site work, and everything while the units are simultaneously being built in a factory. So we have 2 clocks running instead of 1. The apartments arrive finished, we stack them, and this significantly reduces the construction time as well as the construction costs. To put it into perspective, I'm going to show you tangibly what these pivots have led to for our pipeline. The first one that's up on the screen here is our 16th and Island project in East Village. This is 124 homes for households earning between 30 and 60% of area median income. These are the folks that cook in the restaurants, staff our hospitals, that can't afford to live anywhere near either of those. This project was traditionally designed as a type 3 mid-rise project, and it was almost fully permitted. We had to lean into faith and pivot to mass timber to make this work. That move not only allowed us to increase the number of units within the same floor plate from 102 to 124, but it reduced our costs from $530,000 a unit down to $387,000 a unit. And we reduced our overall construction time by 5 months. This allowed us to not only build less expensive, but it really was what allowed us to be competitive and secure the final funding necessary to move the project forward. Because no matter how well a project pencils, if it's not competitive for the financing, a project doesn't move forward. This project will actually be the first mass timber mid-rise full development in the city of San Diego. We've been working with DSD to get through the permitting on this, and this will just be the first of several that we will move forward with. 21 more families were helped by pivoting to this mass timber, and every home cost us about a third less than it would have under our traditional scenario. Go ahead to the next slide. 17th and Commercial, also East Village. This is 99 homes. This one reaches up a little further into the income scale into workforce housing, so up into those earning about 80% of area median income. Teachers, city staff, the people who we keep saying we're losing because they can't afford to live here. This will be our first modular project. We will officially receive our tax credit financing award next week, allowing us to close our construction loan in December and construction starting at the beginning of the year. This modular strategy, similar to the 16th and Island project, which will close in October of this year, allowed us to bring down development costs down to about $387,000, very similar to our costs on our mass timber project, and also what represented about a 30% reduction in construction cost and has a similar time gain in terms of construction. We chose modular on this project because we are subject to prevailing wage, and the offsite nature of the build allows us to save costs on those trades that are not physically performing work on site. The next slide. Now, this one I love. Many of you that are local know about and even probably have driven by the airborne indoor skydiving facility in East Village at the corner of Imperial and 14th Avenue. This building actually sits adjacent to St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa and was previously operated as the Homeless Outreach Center by the San Diego Housing Commission. This is owned by the city of San Diego, and we have a development agreement with the city of San Diego to utilize the existing building as an adaptive reuse space for a new 14-story high-rise that we will be structuring on top. This high-rise will leverage the mass timber technology that we've been talking about and allow us to build 64 new affordable homes, with 42 of them reserved for people at risk of falling into homelessness. This project will also receive its tax credit funding next week, allowing us to close our construction loans and start construction spring of next year. These three projects represent almost 400 homes, 387 homes, $200 million worth of development construction, all beginning in the inside of about the next 9 months. And not only that, these are all funded through competitive awards. And I can tell you, having been in this business a long time, even good projects lose competitive awards every round. But because we shifted to this new construction technology, bringing down our costs, it makes us highly competitive to be able to secure those fundings that we need to move these projects forward. Next slide. And this is just the start. We have more projects coming. We have site control on 2 other projects up in Oceanside that we also hope to leverage this technology on, that'll be moving forward early next year. And we are certainly looking at other opportunities as well. So I'll just kind of finish where I started. You know, the buildings are really the part that you can see. But really what shifted for us was leaning into faith and taking the risk to do what many of the developers in this space have only been talking about, but we've moved forward and are making it happen. And I really hope many of you will come out and join us as we celebrate the upcoming groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings in the months and years to come on these exciting projects. And we appreciate all of you that have partnered with us to date to make all of this happen. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back to you, Deacon Jim.
Thank you. I was trying to come back online. I've had this slide put back because I'm excited about all our construction in the pipeline. This one in particular because of the adaptive reuse. Some of you, if for no other reason, my accent, you can tell I come from the East Coast and New York specifically. And adaptive reuse of buildings is used a lot as an application there. You'll have these beautiful structures, usually mansions of 200 years ago, and the Four Seasons will buy it and build a 25-story building skyscraper of a hotel. And so here, as you see here, the 4th level is the transition level, and that's where we'll have an outside garden as well as the pylons and the structure that will hold up the 15-story building. So this is it's quite interesting. It's just a lot of fun in the whole process, right? And Jody, I know you and your team have fun with it as well. So thank you for that. And there's various ways. It just points to the fact that there's various ways of tackling this affordable housing crisis, right? It can't just be a St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa type, and that was good, absolutely great. It was a lot of density, but there's also Benson Place, you know, the acquisition refurbishment of a hotel. There's using mass timber. There's used modular construction. I mean, there's so much, and we're looking into so many other applications, SROs being another. And with that, it's a good segue. We're into the Q&A section. And before I let you go, Jody, you know, when we think about SROs and the loss of those SROs in the area, why shouldn't we build? And when I say we, I don't necessarily mean Father Joe Villages, though we definitely can be a part of it. Why doesn't the community build SROs en masse? Why isn't there more deployment of SROs?
You know, it's interesting. Part of that is code driven locally here in San Diego because the regulations around new SROs have shifted where Predominantly, the majority of the SROs are either an adaptive reuse, like a Benson, where you're converting motel or a hotel to units, or existing SRO stock. A lot of the newer strategies revolve around shared housing, which is honestly very similar, where somebody is going to get a self-contained bedroom and possibly have shared facilities, kitchens and baths with other occupants. But I do think that there's still some challenges around, one, financing those, just in the way that we traditionally do affordable housing. There's some challenges around that model a little bit. And secondly, when you have more shared facilities that many cases, like a true SRO many times represents, making sure there's good compatibility amongst your occupants are also really important. So, I think there's multiple reasons why this isn't really rolled out a strategy. For a while. The industry went to micro units, the 350, 400 square foot units, which got very close to some of those traditional, but those were more fully contained, just very, very small footprint studio units. So I think that the industry shifted to trying to figure out, how can we provide a fully equipped living environment just in a smaller footprint, as they're doing in other countries. We just haven't adopted as much here. But regulatory challenges, I think, have been the big thing about just expansive development of the SRO space.
And that's where advocacy comes in, and that's part of what we do as well, right? So as we work through this, whether it's housing or whatever, I mean, we're out there advocating for change, and change comes slowly when it comes to the government. But that's part of what we do as well. I have one more question for you here. What's the biggest barrier to building housing in San Diego? Someone wants to know.
Certainly. Well, I would have told you 12 months ago that it was financing. On these projects, to give you an idea, on the 3 projects we have moving toward construction, pre-development costs on those projects are anywhere between $2 and $3 million a piece. So that's the money that we're having to put in before we have permits. And a lot of that money has to go into these deals before we have any certainty that we are going to get financed. Because you have to have all your entitlements in place. You have to have submitted to the building department. There's thresholds we have to have met in order to apply for that funding. But back, as I mentioned previously, all this funding is competitive. So no matter how well your project pencils and how good it is and how well you'll lease up, if your project doesn't fit the check boxes for the priorities of that given year, and whatever the scoring rubric is that has come out for that round, you just simply won't get funded. And without the tax credits and bonds that we rely on, there right now isn't a good alternate way to fund these projects. Now, I do believe we have a better competitive strategy going into this next year, and that we've been able to prove that up in this past year as we've pivoted to these new construction technologies that have allowed us to bring down construction costs considerably. Because regardless of how they change the scoring rubric, usually one of the biggest scoring components is that cost. Cost per unit, cost per subsidy, cost per tax credit. So as we can drive those costs down, it makes us that much more competitive. So funding would be predominantly by number one. Number two is typically land, and not so much just the cost of land, but finding suitable, affordable housing sites that then have a patient seller that are willing to allow us to engage in a purchase contract for sometimes anywhere between 12 and 18 months before knowing we have a certain path forward, due to the things I just mentioned with the financing. So we've been fortunate to date to be able to leverage assets that Father Joe has had control of, and those that we've been able to secure through the cities, through various RFPs. But as we work through those, then coming up with additional opportunities with patient sellers in the right location that check all the boxes will be another barrier that we'll overcome.
That's great. And actually, that last point gets to answering part of the next question, is the final question we have for you here. And we mentioned Benson Place. We mentioned the acquisition and refurbishment of that motel, that old Easy 8, and that was great. And before I ask the question, actually, to put it in perspective, that was all in, that cost us $24.5 million, right? And you'll remember that, Jody. And $3.5 million was the philanthropic portion of that. The rest of it was the public financing. So if you think about a per door cost there for 83 units, pretty good. And so now that was a number of years ago. That was back in 2020. But that said, why aren't we converting? And when I say we, it could be us, Father Joe's Villages, or why isn't the community at large converting old motels into places like Benson Place?
Sure, a couple reasons. I mean, we found in the conversion of Benson Place that it isn't as straightforward as sometimes it would seem to be. You do have a lot of code requirements, things that drive up the cost of being able to retrofit structures like that to make them work. But yet it still can be, I think, a very cost-effective strategy in the right circumstances. I do believe that strategy is best leveraged for PSH, permanent supportive housing, due to the small nature of the unit sizes, because they are typically less than probably 350 square feet, even if you do find suites that can be converted. But secondarily, it's just been cost. We've been watching this market for a while, and a year and a half ago, we were $500,000, $600,000 a door to buy an old motel. Now those are coming down, and now we're talking $300,000-$400,000 still to buy a room. However, if you go back to the projects we're building now, our all-in costs are less than $400,000 a door for new construction. So we have to, looking at that from a different perspective, even if we look at acquisitions right now, acquisitions of older multifamily assets, where you're still going to be in that $300,000 to $400,000 range. And that's before you put more money into them to rehab them. Now, there are state programs focused on the reuse in conversion of motels, such as the turnkey program, home key program, that is specific for that purpose, and you partner with a governmental agency to secure the funding necessary to acquire and renovate those units for the purposes of long-term housing. So I think, like anything in real estate, it's about cycles, and it's about finding the right time within the real estate cycle to make those work again. I think right now there's just a challenge at the price point where you can get them, and in comparison to other alternatives, and the money that has to go into bringing them up to code makes it challenging, unless you're in something like a home key program where it's funding 100% of those costs. And then again, those are specifically for the purposes of PSH units.
That's great. Thank you. And again, if we look at Benson Place, it turned out to be $295,000 a room, a unit. And that was then. This is 6 years later, right? And so,
Yes.
And as you say, the times, we have to seize the time, the opportunity when the time arises. And that's what it's all about. So, but again, the acquisition of motels, I think it's a good strategy, and we have our eye on it as well. There's one last question here, and then I'd like to wrap up with some closing remarks. I'm going to pitch this question to Dr. Parch. It has to do with Prop 44. It's a good question, and basically it's, comment on Prop 44, so explain what that is. And then having said that, if it's passed, and I would say, God forbid it's passed, and you'll see why I say this, if it is passed, then what's the ability for us to continue to provide services in that, as it relates to within that environment, if it was to be passed?
Thank you, Deacon. So I will share very briefly on this, and we can certainly share with you in the future some additional information on it. There is a web address that I'll share with you that's very, very helpful to educate yourself and others. It's noprop44.com. So Prop 44 is a November ballot measure. It is upcoming. And on its surface, it sounds like something that could work. And so what it states is that we're requiring community health centers to invest over 90% of revenue earned in patient care services. The catch is that the way that patient care services are defined is within an exam room or within a counseling office. Everything that happens outside of those spaces is not considered as applicable to the 90%. That includes things like the use of our electronic health record, our rent, custodial, facilities supports, administrative supports, registration, medical records. You're beginning to get the point that it's very difficult to operate a health center if you don't have a physical site, if you don't have supplies, if you don't have administrative team members and all of these things. So the way that this has been brought forth is by a labor union who has proposed it. There are no official proponents of this ballot measure presently, but there's a growing and very large coalition of entities within the state of California that are very much opposed to it. Father Joe's Villages is one such entity in this long and growing list of coalition members. So you are likely to hear from us and see in our upcoming social media and so forth that we are going to be encouraging individuals to educate themselves and family members and friends on this, because again, at the surface, the words sound right, but when you dig into what it is that's being requested, it is quite wrong. And the thing that's especially startling and where it really presents as a risk to us is any dollar spent beyond that 90% that's being stated, anything beyond that is going to be fined at a 1-for-1 ratio. So for every dollar spent, we would be fined by the state $1 in kind. So the unique care services that we provide, the way that we provide them are already very, very costly. We provide integrated services in a manner in which drive costs for us, but do right by the human being that we serve. And that's our care philosophy, is we're going to do the right work when folks come to us. And so Prop 44 is something that's truly quite frightening for us in the way that we provide care services. And it could be significantly detrimental to the way that we enact care and financially dangerous for us if it's passed. So again, we'll get more information on that out to the group, but thank you for inviting that question.
Thank you, Dr. Parch. Again, vote no on 44. So I'll just say that. Thank you, Dr. Parch, for joining us. I want to thank also Jesse Caseman and Jody Rothery. It was great to have you with me on this call. You know, we respond to basic needs all the way up to expanding access to recovery and affordable housing. That's what it's all about. We're blessed to have that continuum of care, and we're able to do it because of your partnership. And so I cannot thank you enough. I mean, I hope that what we've shared with you has resonated with you. I hear time and time again from each and every single one of you how you're pleased that we do step up to the plate time and time again. If you want additional information, you have a UPC code right there on your screen. Be sure to scan it and keep up to date on all the services that we're providing at any given time. I will say that there's an exciting announcement that we will be making at the end of September. I won't be sharing with you right now, but just to whet your appetite, it's really going to be transformative. And you'll hear that announced publicly at the end of September. So stay tuned for that. It's again how Father Joe's Villages is going to take a leap forward on the services that we're able to provide here in this community. So we're blessed to do that. I'll leave you with a quote, and it's from Pope Leo. Pope Leo, who was elected to the pontificate a little over a year ago, has had a heavy focus on the poor, as you can imagine. He's had that focus all his life, actually, as a priest. And one thing that he said that has resonated with me is that when we bend to care for the poor, we assume our highest posture. Again, think about that. When we bend to care for the poor, we assume our highest posture. And I truly believe that. So I thank you for believing in our mission. I thank you for believing and walking alongside those of our neighbors who we're blessed to serve. God bless you and have a wonderful evening.